Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and this is the next part. I forget which number it is in our ongoing series, The Human Game. Sonia Barrett is here. It's been a couple months, actually. I think you were the first person. I can't remember if it was you or Dr. Lieberman because they were in the same week. You were the first person that we talked to once all fucking hell broke loose with, whatever this current.
The Matrix.
Yeah, this shift in realities that sort of, was instigated in early March. And for you, for me, for everybody, really, like it's been an interesting process of how we have, the outward has evolved with, like, it went from, certain kinds of like, stay at home, to the mask, to ongoing lockdowns, to all sorts of shit that doesn't make any sense. So things have shifted out there, but also, we've now been dealing with this thing for a while. And, we each, I think, in our own way have sort of figured out like what our limits and boundaries are, and how, and in some ways our position and how we deal with some of these things have evolved. And there's also been a process of internal work that has been needing to have been done during this time. And if it hasn't been done yet, really it's important to start doing that, because one of the things that's going on that a lot of people are missing in their reactivity to all of this, which is understandable because it's fucking frustrating, is that, and I talked about this with Michael Wan last week, reality is up for grabs right now. There are all sorts of metaphysical, energetic, spiritual possibilities that have always been open to us, but for some reason, like, the energy right now is there, that they're much more available and sort of easier to attain if you can keep yourself from wasting all of your time being reactive to the outer stimuli, right? So I wanted to talk about some of that with you today. So first of all, welcome back. It's nice to have you here again.
Oh, thank you so much. It's always good to be here chatting with you. It's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. So when you were here last time, we talked, it was very early on, and you had written an article, about, that this was really part of like an upgrade, right? Like there was going to be a default upgrade for everybody, and then opportunities for bigger upgrades for certain, for people who, are able to take sort of certain perspectives and attitudes and things like that during this time. And it was a really interesting article, and it was widely shared and read. And I think it was, very much in your belief about things, right? Very much how you see the game. And then one of the things that was really interesting, and, I watched this with a couple of people who are the people that I sort of look up to and admire and go to as mentors and stuff like that, like a sort of warrior or resistance aspect of themselves that had been gone for a while because they'd evolved to something else, resurfaced as part of what this time was about. And you kind of went through a phase where you were managing that with yourself. And I think we all were, right? But sometimes it's like, something you think is gone, right? This thing you think you've dealt with and is never going to bother you again, that stuff comes up. So you've kind of been on an interesting arc through this. And we were just talking before we started here kind of about where you've evolved to now, and in terms of how you're dealing with this on the external, right? And you just had an interesting, trip to the airport and traveling and whatnot. So kind of, can you talk to people a little about what this period of time has been like for you?
Well, my warrior self is really just on full, still on full blast, in different ways. And I'm really comfortable with it. And I tell you why I'm so comfortable with it is because I realize that warrior aspect, it holds incredible significance right now. So there's the warrior self, but it doesn't mean you are at war where you're boiling on the inside and you're, it's the different kind of position. It's a stance, it's a strength, it's an awareness, it's a solidness in who you are that you're anchoring. And that's what I see, where I see myself. I also see that aspect of us is super important, because you need that kind of strength to move through and penetrate layers of this matrix. So if we begin to spend time the more conforming that we do, actually, it's really interesting because there is a level of conforming, and there's conforming with awareness. Obviously, are making choices. There is, as Emily said earlier, it's you have your boundaries as to what you will do, how far you will play this Simon Says game, or and just where you stand. So I think that the again, the strength that you have to have is necessary to move yourself through to these various levels. That is now an opportunity for us because we're in this massive and mass transition. We are seeing a level of history in the making that maybe we would only have read about. Maybe if you get on the planet 20 years from now, 30 years from now, you're going to read about it. But this is a major shifting point that we have been gifted with the opportunity to be here to witness it and to be part of that wave that is there, that transformative wave. And Emily, I know I've talked about the default upgrade. And so we are witnessing the default upgrade where people are going to be upgraded in some way according to where they are in the shifts that they're wanting to make in their lives. And then there are the people like yourself and myself, those people who have been at it for a while and they're standing solid. And that's what this means to me, that warrior self is the anchoring of my master self. And it's not just about just being in opposition, just fighting. No, I'm looking at the design of the system of this matrix and how we can more easily become part of a sort of a collective, sort of a Borg kind of mentality, while you're still kind of feeling like you're being in this conscious state. This stuff is real subtle. Mm-hmm. So you can be going under the water over on this side, but you don't really realize that you're still feeling you're pretty strong. You're like, well, no, I'm just, I go ahead and I'm going to comply with whatever. But the more that we comply to certain things is the further they push the boundaries into what we would define as personal freedom. So the more we do that is the more they test the waters as to how many more things can we impose that human beings will follow. So that is one reason why I do stand my ground. That's your part in this 3D aspect of things. So we're doing both. It's not just we're just being spiritual beings, whatever this up in the air feeling thing that we've got going. It's the whole shebang. It's the 3D. It's the journey beyond the level 1 construct and behavior in the game. It all counts, and to me, it's all okay. I'm seeing the ride, and I'm seeing my own power and my own strength rising up my physical self as well, out of the sort of mud of the matrix and out of the limiting and the collective limitation story that's been sold. So that's why I warrior forward.
I like the way you sort of defined warrior, because I think a lot of people, like what's happened, like there's some, obviously some very important strength characteristics to a warrior, but also sometimes when we over-identify with the warrior aspect in a wrong way, we're looking for fights. We're wasting a lot of time,
a lot of energy,
and a lot of energy that is like, it's almost like putting a lot of energy towards an old system that's dying rather than towards the new thing. So I think, and one of the things that we each have to decide for ourselves and then respect what each other decides for themselves is like, what is my limit? What is my boundary? What things am I willing to do and not? And then also, how much energy am I willing to expend in relation to like trying to negotiate that with other people, right? And where is the line for me? And so, like for me, like there's a couple things that I just absolutely will not do, and then there's other things that my decision and take on it has been like, okay, I'm going to play with this rather than resist this, right? Like I'm going to, like I watch a lot of people, you know, we see a lot of videos, we hear a lot of stories of people going to the store and arguing with the person at the front door about the mask and about this, that, trying to explain that they have a medical condition, right? And they're creating this, like a lot of energy and attention around that. I have like this thing that's like a headband, basically. I decided at a certain point I'm not wearing anything that looks like a surgical or a medical thing or anything like that, because I don't like this, you know, that sort of thing feels not human to me. So something that I have that I would have worn anyway, possibly in a different way maybe, right? So I have this thing. It's not even a mask or a face cover. It's like a wide headband, right?
Right.
So when I go through it, and it doesn't even touch my face on most of it, so you can breathe well. I walk through the front door with it on, and then I take it off. And then I'm in the store without my mask on and doing what the person who's fighting with the person at the front wants to be doing, which is being in the store without a mask, right?
Right.
They're now either not getting in the store, or once they get in the store, they have someone following them around to make sure they're wearing the mask, right?
Yeah.
So like for me, that's been like how I've chosen to deal with that. Here in Los Angeles, as you've experienced, it's not possible to get into a store really without this. And I certainly decided from the beginning that I'm not going to pay those same stores that are insulting my intellect and all that other stuff 30% more to have them deliver to me. Like that, for me, that like, right. So, you know, there's room to play with it. And then the energy that I save not arguing with people, like I'm starting to explore all the physics of the energies and stuff like that are going on right now. We're playing with cloaking ourselves. We're playing with projecting that, like, you know, so a person thinks they see a mask on you, but you're not actually wearing one. So we're working with like our ability to transfigure and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And these things are available if you're not expending your energy, right?
That's true.
But, yeah, you know, and so I liked what you were just telling me about what happened with you at the airport, right? And how you're sort of like, I don't know if you want to share a little bit of that. But
yeah, I can share that. And like Emily, from the very get-go, I had decided it was not an option. I was never going to spend a dime on a mask. I was not going to invest in it. So I wear a scarf. And so I'll cover my mouth as I need to. My boundaries are, I won't cover my nose at all. It's just not going to happen.
That's what I do, yeah.
So just to let people know. So what I do is, like Emily, when I go in the store, and if there's a problem, if it's close enough in when I get in and somebody says, you need your nose covered, immediately once they say you need your nose covered, I say, thank you very much. And I leave. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm like, peace out. But I already decide, doesn't matter where it is that I go, I am not covering my nose.
Yeah.
So in this case, I had to travel. So I was coming back yesterday. It will be yesterday for us, but I was coming back, and you go through TSA, and I always opt out. I always put my socks on.
That's my boundaries. Yep.
Absolutely. I put my socks on. I won't walk on the floor. I put my socks on, which I think is kind of crazy because they don't say anything about the millions of people walking in the same spot without shoes, but you must have it is the most ridiculous thing that I have ever seen. So anyway, I put my socks on. They know I opt out. And the woman walks over, she's called over, and before she lets me through the gate to do the pat down, she says, do you have a mask? And I said, well, yes, I'm wearing my face covering. This is it right here. So she goes, well, you don't have a mask? Again, I'm wearing my face covering, that's it right here. So she reluctantly lets me in, and then she says, well, stand here. She says, well, I need you to wear a mask because I'm not comfortable doing the pat down with you not having a mask on. I said, well, actually, I am following the law. They said face covering or an actual mask. This is my face covering. I'm doing as has been said, requested. So she proceeds to get the other girl, TSA agent says, do you want a mask for her? As if I'm like 2 and I'm, so I go, I'm thinking to myself, okay, is she going to give her the mask to give it to me? So she's like, yes, like she wants a mask for her. So she proceeds to hand me the mask, and I said, well, again, I am wearing my face covering, which is approved. And that's what I said it real calmly, just like this. This is what I'm wearing. Then she starts to get upset that her now she's pulling out all the matrix stuff. Her kid has asthma. She's like telling me all this stuff. And I'm just standing there. And then she finally goes, well, unless you would prefer someone else to to do the pat down, if you're not comfortable with wearing a mask. And then she's going on, and I just calmly said, yes, that will be fine, you can get me someone else. And so the other person that she's told, the lady was just really calm and nice, and she said, okay, no problem. And we walked over, and she said, if you're comfortable with removing your scarf to do the pat down. I said, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I remove my scarf. She does the pat down. We have a conversation about, where I had gone to, the interview that I had gone to do in Denver and so on. And, she says, okay, let me now test the gloves. And she's like, all right, you have a great day. And I said, well, thank you. And I got my scarf and my stuff, and I was out, because I already said I wasn't wearing a mask, and I wasn't going to be putting a mask on. There was no reason for it.
Yeah. So what I like about this, and I heard a very similar story from Robert yesterday, who also I've watched, the two of you have kind of gone through a similar evolution during this period of time. It's been kind of interesting because you are two people who I consult about, you guys are mentors to me and whatever. And I've kind of watched, and it's been interesting. And he told me almost a very similar story yesterday. And by not, you were very clear on your boundary, right? And you didn't get emotional when the person was not respecting it, right? Yeah. You let her get emotional to the point where she had to walk away. Mm-hmm. And then not only did you not have to put a mask on, but you actually got to take your face covering off, which is your preferred method of travel anyway, right? So all of these things right now. So what, there's something, seems to be something that happens when there's a lot of energy discharged around the situation.
Well, people are expecting to be in a war. I think that's part of it. It's like, oh, if I go through TSA, they better not touch me here. And then what I found in the very beginning too, because is that I had to make sure I didn't have that concern. And I thought, you know what, gonna be fine. This is so it's been fine. So you're right.
Yeah, when people get into that argument. So one of the things that I've noticed is when people are deciding what their boundaries are and how they're going to handle this, they need to pick a boundary point that they can maintain their calm and their cool at.
Absolutely.
Because if there's there's nothing going to be gained by yelling and screaming at the person at the front or the manager of the store about, what the word mandate is versus the word law. We all know that stuff is bullshit, right?
It's true. They have no idea what you're talking about and don't care.
Right. But that almost seems to block the ability to move through. So as we're deciding, because obviously we're going to be living with some version of what we're in right now for the next period of time, right? Mm-hmm. That, the decision we make for ourselves should be one that we can hold without elevating our nervous system, mm-hmm. right? Because what that does is it gives opportunity, it creates that situation for something to flow. So that woman couldn't handle the flow. She went away, and a woman who wanted to ride on the same wave
mm-hmm.
as you showed up. And that's in my experience.
She was like right there, almost like ready, like she got the orders. It's like, boom, be standing right there. Yeah.
What it really was probably as the frequencies resonated, right?
Absolutely.
That kind of thing. And so rather than be in this resistance elevated mode, this is what I've decided. And I'm cool standing, anchoring in that spot, right? Mm-hmm. And this goes for other stuff too. We're in this weird time right now that how you present something, how you ask the question, how you make the statement, it can be the same words, but you get a totally different response, right? Robert was saying that he had this situation where he wasn't wearing a mask and he wasn't asked to wear one, but somebody else came in not wearing one and he was forced to put one on, right? Mm-hmm. And it was because of the manner in which Robert was holding himself. Mm-hmm. It didn't trigger a certain response in another person, right? And so I think that while I totally, we understand intellectually that there have been no laws passed. This is all edicts, orders, and mandates that have no basis in like legality or morality. We're in a game here that's about energetic exchange. And like, if we're really wanting to understand the physics and the metaphysics of how this system and game works, then the lubrication doesn't happen when your system is elevated. The lubrication happens when you're calm, confident, and secure in your decision. And if you couldn't get on that flight, you weren't going to get on the flight. You were not going to bend your thing.
No,
right? But you weren't hysterical about it.
No, I wasn't, because I already had set my ground rules about all of it. And some things, it's like I don't want to even talk about on air. I mean, as to my getting on the plane and how I do all of that. And then the reason is because there's so many people, we don't know who listens. And then what happens is then you get this whole other adverse action that's happening. But let's put it this way. I move about the airport as I desire. We'll just we just state that. And I don't focus on, because somebody asked me, are people looking at you? And I don't focus on who's looking at me. I don't try to find people looking at me. I am in my bubble and I am about my business. That's how I do it. So I have no interest in the rest of the background noise or the extras in the freaking on the set. Oh, I don't care what the extras think. So I just kind of go ahead and I know what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And I think you have to be solid in that. If you're looking around like oh my God, what if, somebody says something to me, that's a whole different mindset. You have to be so self-assured and certain and just solid in what your choices are and what you're doing. And it works for not just this, but like a whole bunch of stuff. This is a moment of coming to yourself. What do they say? Come to Jesus moment. Well, it's come to whatever your name is. Come to Sonia moment.
Self, yeah.
Come to self.
Yeah.
And that's kind of basically what this is, an incredible exercise, opportunity to see where you are in your truth. And I don't think I'm jumping too far ahead, but I'm going to throw this out and you let me know, discussion or not. But because of everything going on right now, there's a lot of folks who are big in the supposed community, movement, awareness community that are they're scared. There's a lot of fear. They're scared. They're saying all this stuff they've said all these years, and all of a sudden they've succumbed to that same model of reality that's going on with the fear, is be careful, be safe. Are you sure it's safe for you to do this? What? I thought you were just talking about quantum physics and all this other stuff. Where are you coming from with all of these other things? So it's this moment of, in a way, put your money where your mouth is. And certainly, have there been places? I did go to some place that I thought, wow, I'd love to go in this store. And I did not know they were going to do that. And I walked in and she said, are you by yourself? I said, yes. She said, okay, I'm going to have to take your temperature and then I'm going to have to disinfect your hands. And I looked at her and I said, you need to do what? And when she said it again, I simply said, okay, thank you very much. And I turned around and I left. There's just, for me, it's just a finality with some things I am just not going to do, especially if it's like not important. It's just whatever it is. It's not that important. People also need to know that they're supposedly, some of these stores, how they put out the mist for like when it's hot. Yeah. But they're planning to put like disinfectant in the mist, some of these places. So, I mean, it's just to pay attention. I think for me, it's not the fear so much of what's in it. It's the imposition. It's the imposition. And I want to have choice as to whether I choose to do that or not. And that, I think this is a good part of all of this too. It's not randomly running off to, oh, okay, well, I guess if we have to do it. You want to take this journey into a more expansive part of yourself. This is part of the exercise right here, right now, is part of that exercise program. How else are you going to see other realms and possibilities if you can't navigate this little space right now? That's how I've seen it for myself. If I can't work this, if I can't do this and learn to work my magic and my master self right here in this, how am I going to do anything that's more expansive or larger?
What's going to happen when you find yourself at the door of the Stargate and it looks a little scary on the other side or whatever?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exercise program, people. Right now, it's an exercise program, regardless of how irritating it is, but it's letting you know who you are. Who am I really? Wow, I didn't know I had that much fear. Wow, now maybe I can start examining what is that about.
Yeah. So, but I think the thing I want to focus on here, and this will bridge what we just talked about, and then on the other side, what we're going to go into in the second hour. And I think you had a post on Facebook last week that I'm going to show in just a second. It was like a poster that had all of these sort of questions that it's really important to be asking yourself right now. So like for me, it's important on both sides of this issue. If you are still having emotional reactions in your confrontations with people around all of this stuff, right? This overwhelming need to, have that energy discharge or to try and change other people's behavior, or whatnot, like, then I think these are good questions to help bring you into a place where, okay, these are my boundaries and I'm calm about it. And this is what I'm doing, and sort of start to loosen that up. And then on the other side, like, okay, so now I've addressed these issues and I'm firm in myself. I'm not agitated or activated by so many of these external interactions anymore. And now I can start to see what the other possibilities are during this time, because I'm not distracted with masks and race riots anymore or whatever, right? Okay, so I'm going to pull up this this thing that you posted, and I think we can kind of go through these questions and kind of talk about, like, why this is so important right now. And a lot of people might think that they get irritated with me when I say these things and how they're connected because they don't see it.
Okay, so they'd just be irritated with both of us. Yeah. Misery loves company.
Right? But there's things that we should hopefully have been working on before now, but if you haven't, it's really time to work on these things. And even if you can't see the connection now, they're connected. And I promise addressing these things within yourself are going to change how you're able to deal with all of this stuff. So I'm going to pull this up right now, and we are going to start going through. All right, here we go. So this is what Sonia posted, and let's just start right at the top. Time to hold yourself accountable. Like, how is it that not having held yourself accountable for maybe your whole life, or for things in the last few years, or even the last 5 minutes, is connected to how you're dealing with what's going on now?
Mm-hmm.
How is that?
Oh, are you talking? You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. So time to hold yourself accountable. I think that is the key here. I think that it is a major component, a major, to some degree, hidden gem in this whole situation, this paradigm right now. It's accountability. And people are not realizing and not asking that question. Time to hold yourself accountable. We're not talking time to blame yourself. We're saying time to hold yourself accountable, period, for choices you've made in your life. And that's where that list then sort of follows, just to give people sort of a kickoff as to what that accountability could look like.
So this could be something sort of like, there's probably, and on a certain level, rightfully so, a lot of people maybe who've lost their job right now, right, during this period of time. And this is not to blame you, right? But
right.
We don't like what the government and the corporations are doing right now, right? And so right. The fact of the matter is that a lot of us, through just the way things have been, what we learned from our parents, or just going with the program, put ourselves in situations where we were dependent on the government and the corporate sort of structure for how we made our living. And now, rather than sitting and waiting for those things to come back so we can go back to a certain previous level of perceived comfort we had before, coming to terms with the fact that, like, okay, if I have all of that stuff attached to the system, then this can happen at any time, and I can have this effect on me. So how can I move myself into, this is just one example.
Right.
Being accountable for the fact that, like, when I choose to attach myself to a system and become dependent on it, right, then I'm at the mercy of that on a certain level, as opposed to, okay, maybe I'm going to use the system to play the game, but I also am going to understand that it just might go away like that. Right. Kind of thing.
That's very different. That's a very different concept. And that second part, what you just said, I think is the ultimate key when you're working any kind of job, because that was a realization I came to. Me being on any job, it was by choice, and I was going to utilize that job to gain whatever it is that I needed to until that moment was over. And then you freely allow that change to happen. So I think that's super important, because a lot of people are dealing with that right now.
Okay, so then the next one is, what's your diet like? And this one pisses a lot of people off, because in their head, they can't see how, like, what they eat has any connection to the fact that, like, we're under, this tyrannical nonsense and whatever right now, right? So for me, it's kind of like, well, part of the way that is connected is we have a situation right now where those of us who have been taking good care of our body, right, and some of that is hard work, right? Some of it is just smart choices and understanding things, and others is hard work, right? For many, many years, we are now being held hostage by people who never cared about their health until March 11th, right? And so the more people who are confident and comfortable in their immune system and the strength and health of their body, they're not going to be as easy to manipulate with fear about a virus or getting sick or whatever, because you can count on your body because you've put the time and effort into it, right? And then also, just the quality of your diet affects how you perceive information, how you perceive what's going on around you, because this is your computer, this is how it works, and if you feed it garbage, it's not going to do the computations correctly, right? So what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that you just said. And I think that one of the things that we're looking at is how it doesn't get mentioned in the whole process of what's being said by in the media by these medical experts is diet. And of course, your diet means, are you taking in dead, low frequency foods that have very little life force in it? And let me clarify that too. I am not saying you have to be vegetarian or vegan. Even if you're a meat eater, are you eating grass-fed meat? Are you eating food that's optimum? Are you, when we heard about this pandemic, did you fill your freezer with processed foods that are so high in sodium and so high in preservatives? I mean, how much of that do you eat? This is not about, like, just blaming yourself and beating up yourself. If you so want to be healthy, if you want to be well, guess what? It requires telling yourself the truth and holding yourself accountable. And the diet is part of it. That's how your body works. It works best when it gets the right fuel. And so if your diet is off, which is you're getting fuel from it, enjoying your food really in one way is secondary. You want to enjoy it, and you want to get the proper energy source also. So it's a combination. But so the diet is very important, particularly also if you're stressing. When you're stressed out and your diet is also of a low frequency, that's a double whammy for your body. That's a double whammy against that immune system. And that is not just me and Emily saying this. This is just science and common sense when we think of it. Your immune system is affected by what goes into it, and that includes obviously stress, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, and just the other thing with diet is like it's great to enjoy your food and have a fancy meal. I certainly, upon occasion or whatever, but it's really important if you haven't done this work by now to do it now, to understand what is it your body needs in order to function well, to feel well, and to be able to think clearly, because those are two of the most important things, obviously, under this circumstance. So I know that regardless of what else is going on, if I eat these few things, I'm going to feel well and I'm going to be thinking clearly. And so if you guys haven't figured that out for yourself, right now there's no time like the present, right? And then the next question is, what's your health like, right? And that goes to sort of the overall sort of thing. Does your health your perceived health, come from medications and vaccines, right, that you got from the doctor, right? Or does your health come from, natural things, right? From good quality food, good quality water, exercise, like, doing yoga or whatever your breathing techniques or things like that. What do you rely on for your health? Do you rely on yourself, or do you rely on that same system, right, that we got reliant on with jobs and things like that, right?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of, when I was listening to one of those stupid interviews with Bill and Melinda Gates, that when they decided how they wanted to deploy vaccines in the maximum, right? Like how they were going to deploy the thing that they think is the cause of health. They literally think that vaccines cause good health, right? And there's a lot of people, my dad thinks that his medication causes good health, right? A lot of people think that. They looked at the model of Coca-Cola, right? They didn't, they're like, well, there's Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is ubiquitous. It's available all over the world. So how are we going to deploy vaccines in the same way that they deploy Coca-Cola, right? They didn't think about how we're going to bring health the same way fruit and vegetables grow from the ground, right? And a thing. And so, like, what is your sort of relationship with the idea of health? Is it holistic in nature, or is it more like, mechanistic or like reactive in nature, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yes, once again, I think everything that Emily just said, but I also think that when we say, what's your health like? I think particularly now, because I'm being calm, particularly now, I think that people need to be honest. If you have high blood pressure, if you have diabetes, if you're obese, if you have autoimmune diseases that you've had to deal with and be on medication, all of those things do make you a more of a prime candidate for some of what is going on right now. So when I'm saying, what's your health like, you need to be honest. And I think a lot of people are not being honest with themselves now about it. And I'll give an example as well. One of the reasons is because a lot of people aren't educated on what good health looks like, what that model of health actually looks like. And so then the blame game starts. It's everybody else's fault for you not telling the truth about your situation at this time, your health situation at this time. There was something I wanted to throw in about, all right. So I was watching, something came up on the internet, and it was one of the stations, Fox or something. And you know how they go out and they interview people on the street. And this was when it was about the lockdown. I think it was when they lifted it. And this lady, they interviewed her briefly. She's sitting in her car. She was grossly overweight. I mean, like really a big woman. And her son is next to her, like a teenager, with his order of fries from the famous Arches. Sitting there, he's eating his fries, and then she says, I think that they lifted the lockdown way too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? They lifted the lockdown way too soon as you leave McDonald's and you guys are eating this stuff, but they lifted it too soon because clearly this person does not want to take accountability for why she would probably be susceptible, more vulnerable to something like this. And this is part of what I'm talking about. Tell yourself the truth. The only thing that you have to gain from telling yourself the truth is to move into a more optimum space, whether it's physically or emotionally. So what's your health like? For me, it involves all of that.
Yeah, and there's another so you're talking about how we're seeing that play out amongst the mainstream population, but there's another version of that that exists in the alternative information community. And that's people who are like aware of all the conspiracies and everything that's going on and whatnot, but they sit behind their computer, like looking for more information and listening to scary things about, you know, they're going to come to your house and force a vaccine on you and things like that all day long, right? But they haven't like, there's people out there who literally think someone is coming for them, but they can't run if the person gets there, right? So like that's the one that's I've never quite been able to get my head around. These people who just sit there consuming information, consuming it.
They're the unhealthiest a lot of times.
How many people that have all this knowledge, they know about chemtrails and GMOs and vaccines and blah, 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 but they've just sat at their computer, right? They don't exercise. Maybe they eat, you know, maybe they're not careful not to get any GMOs, but they're still eating mostly garbage. You know what I mean? And they have not decided, you know what? I need to get to the place where I can run a mile.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Like, you know, so if you think someone is coming for you, whether or not that's the truth is not the issue I'm getting at here, but that's a huge like mindset of people in the alternative community, is that they're coming for us.
Right.
When you know someone is coming for you, do you just sit still at the computer and wait? Or do you put your running shoes on and get out the door? Right? Yeah. I'm not saying we should metaphorically run from the situation, but if you're clear someone is coming for you, then you better be
prepare yourself.
Yeah.
That's the case. Yeah, prepare yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So the next one is, what's your mind like? And that relates in some ways to the other one, right? Like, what is the quality of the information that you take in, and what do you spend most of your time thinking about? Right? Like, is this kind of what you're talking about here?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. What's going on in your mind? I mean, how much low frequency thoughts are really being processed in your head, in your mind all day long? How much, for lack of another word, negativity. There's some people that just live in that space of doom and gloom. And even with what you're talking about, with the people that spend time on the computer just coming up with more fear and more fear and more fear, that's also that also can saturate the mind. And this all, I like to take everything and lead it back to the state of the body. I think that it's really important that people really realize that everything that we're saying leads back to the state of the body, because they tend to have this separated feeling, which is what the media and all the medical gurus that they have that come on, they don't talk about that. And this is really important. So again, if your mind is filled with fear, because since fear is being sold right now, then that fear and that mind, however that mind is, will make your body acid. It will affect your body's natural function, and it can affect your immune system. So again, the mind is super important. It's probably the apex of much of this.
Absolutely. And I've also, like, it's become very clear to me, you know, and this is the Human Game series here, right? That we are on some level, while it's very real on one level, on another level, it's just completely a game. And I've found tremendous power in my life since I started to make my decisions, a lot of my decisions, not all of them, more from that game self than from the reactive self. And one of the keys I've discovered to becoming a better game player is to be more amused by the game than you are annoyed by it. So if the totality of the information that you are taking in on a daily basis leaves you in a place where you are more annoyed by this game than you are amused by it or intrigued by it or whatever, then you might want to look at switching that diet of information up.
Right. And you can be annoyed with laughter, which is what I do, which is what we do.
The wheels,
yeah. There's annoyance, and then there's humor out of it, because you have to. And it's like with any game. I mean, I remember playing Monopoly with a couple of people in the past, and Monopoly is a game, right?
Yeah.
And they got so mad they turned over the board because they
Yeah.
were losing.
I know someone like that. Not me, but I know
So,
someone like that. Yes.
yeah. So
If I lose, yeah. I don't
right.
care. Yeah.
So
I
it's
like
all the
them, but
same
yeah.
thing, huh?
I like when we play cards or board games. Of course, everybody likes to win, but I'm just as humored by it when I lose as by when I win. But
Yeah.
some people get really upset, dude.
Yeah.
Like that. You know, my favorite are like grown-ups who will cheat to beat little kids. You know,
Oh
if you
my
know,
gosh.
right?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
So,
Yeah, that's
and
crazy.
there's also a lot of there's things to be learned by losing. If we're always winning, then we're not growing very well, right?
Exactly. You
Like
gotta know
Donald
both
Trump
sides.
doesn't grow because he's just winning so much, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next is what's your lifestyle like, right? And for me, like what that translated to when I was looking at this was like, how many of the things that you sort of enjoy in life or take pleasure in or find value in are things that are that you sort of generate yourself, or that you're not reliant on other things or other people for, right? Are you good at entertaining yourself? Are you good at, you know, finding new avenues to express your creativity and grow that aren't dependent on like some provision, some major provision? Not that we can't ever like, you know, work with other people or use technologies or whatever, but like, can you entertain yourself for a whole day without another person and without technology, right? Are you able to sort of keep yourself entertained and busy and curious? Can you sit quietly and read a book? All this kind of stuff, right? You know, if you are just dependent on having to have constant like external technological stimulation or be with other people all the time, then in my opinion, there's something about your lifestyle that is not working for you, right? Like I interviewed this guy like about 6 weeks ago now, who he's an expert in skin and gut health. But he does that part of the time, and the rest of the time he does like all of his little hobbies. Like he makes the kind of vans you can live in. He builds different things and whatever. And like what he really is an expert in lifestyle design. He comes up with all his stuff himself, and then he sells the vans and he has clients with the health stuff, but he's doing it because it entertains him and he likes it. It makes him feel good. Right? I was like, that's what you should really be, is like a lifestyle design expert more than a nutrition consultant or whatever, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's major. That lifestyle, in terms of, again, what you said, and it's fun. It's what am I doing to nourish my soul and just to nourish my third dimensional experience. We do like to typically enjoy ourselves with either listening to music or getting out. And it doesn't matter that we say, well, the lockdown's going on. No, you can still get out. You can still find trails that you can walk, or are you getting enough, exercise? Are you spending much of your time, as Emily said, just being, entertained by, by media, by the news or whatever? Is there a writing project that you had, maybe you've been wanting to write? Do you need to constantly be with someone? Can you be, with yourself? I understand that we need social interaction. I get that. But if you're noticing just how challenging it was just from the very beginning, or just even before this, to just spend time with yourselves, because there's some people that have a hard time spending 5-10 minutes alone. They don't want to deal with themselves. And I think this is that moment to really examine these things as they come up, not sweep them under the rug, but really look at them, so that there's sometimes a why will come up, like, why is that? Why is that? And it's those moments of the why, and really seeing this, that is going to help to clear us, to be able to see more clearly a different direction to go in. But lifestyle, I think, is super important. And if you're sitting around and you're drinking every night,
How you spend your time,
you're drinking every night, and alcohol, first of all, is not a great stimulant for sleeping. Even though you fall asleep, it doesn't mean that you're getting a restful sleep. So it's all of those things that you have to take a truthful look at.
Absolutely. Okay, so this next one is really good. Do you see yourself as a victim? Right? You know,
Yeah.
like, and this is always, but right now, obviously, like the majority of people on earth are seeing themselves as suffering some kind of imposition or loss based on like having done nothing themselves, right? So that they're right, you know, and
It's all being done to them. Yeah.
yeah, you know, and this is, you know, and sometimes people get upset with me when I say this, but I'm only saying it because, like, of my experience and how things, like when I saw myself as a victim, no matter how much work I quote unquote did on myself, or how many things I tried, or how many therapies I tried, or this, or healings, or energy removal, you know, implant removals, or this or that, or whatever, like it didn't work. I'd feel good for a day or two or a week or whatever, and then it would come back. And you know, at that time I was dealing with a lot of like programming breaking down and this shit with targeted individuals. And at a certain, finally, I just got to the place where like nothing else has worked. I'm just going to accept responsibility for all of this, right? I'm going to not, because then I'm at least in a power position where I'm not a victim. So maybe I'll be able to trick myself into thinking I'm powerful, right? And so, and then things started to happen. Right. So I'm like, you know, so I'm only saying this because I've tried the other stuff and the other stuff doesn't work, like the taking responsibility for yourself. And this goes into the next one too, but your life choices and whatnot. You know, right now we're in this situation where, like, because of the things going on with surveillance and contact tracing and 5G, or, you know, Sonia's hoping for 6G, and, you know.
Don't you get them started again. Oh my gosh.
It effectively, you know, really turns the whole world into targeted individuals, right? And so, you know, this is the only way that worked for me to untarget myself, was to take responsibility for everything. And that doesn't mean that, oh, I'm blaming myself for 5G. What it means is, okay, it's here. It's here. So what am I going to do with my mind, my body, my life to adapt, overcome, mitigate, whatever? What am I going to do? What can I do? You know what I mean? Not what are they going to stop doing, or what is someone else going to do, or what is this treatment or that whatever going to do. It really is shifting your mindset from something is happening to me to I'm doing something, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Because the victim one, like you said, is a biggie. Um, being, if you see yourself as a victim, I think a lot of times, yes, it does make it easier in the sense of the self responsibility part. And it's not that people are being insensitive by saying this. Certainly, we all have had experiences in our lives where we could say that we were victimized. I mean, we all have. I mean, I certainly have had
We've all had our
my
car
share.
broken into or stuff like that. Yeah.
Just different, yeah, different situations. And you know, and so you can dwell on that and why me and how did this happen to me, or you can realize the game aspect of this. You can realize the story aspect of this is a variety of stories. You can hear the stories that you've been telling yourself. You can see the patterns of you know, you always get the short end of the stick. You know, it's a woe me. You can look at that, and other people say, "Wow, gosh, you always try to be such a good person, and all these things, you know, just happen to you. How come?" And listen to those stories that you're telling yourself. And then when you really, really own it, and to the point where you can laugh at it, because it will be funny. When you step back and you hear some of that, you start cracking up. And then you say to yourself, okay, I get it. All right, I take full ownership.
When you're more amused by it than you are upset by it,
yeah,
you're able to move it, that just you're able to move it in a different direction.
Absolutely. And the fact of the matter too is that this journey is really it's really wild, because there is obviously a more expansive part of us that have, you know, brought us into this aspect of us into this game for these various levels of experiences and stories that we've dealt with, that we've been dealing with. And so if you start looking at things from that aspect as well, you realize that somehow every experience that you've had has brought you to this moment. If we start looking at that, everything that you've dealt with all your life has brought you right here, right now. You're listening to this for a reason, or whatever it is. You're brought to your now moment always by the steps that you've taken, you've gone through on your journey to now. So the question is, what do I do from this point forward? And being a victim will just keep giving you more of the same thing.
Yeah. So the next one was, who are you blaming for your life's choices? And I think there's a lot of correlation to that, but I think that this one is actually like really
Specific.
specific and up right now. Like for me, right? Like I have some difficult people in my life, right? And some of these difficult people in my life are also loving and generous and have been very helpful to me. But sometimes you get in a dynamic with some of them, right, that is not good. But for some reason, you continue to choose to stay in that sort of, you know,
model
cycle or situation, right? And it's very easy to say, oh, this person is an asshole, or my dad is doing this to me, or whatever. But like at any point you can choose to do something else. And that's actually when you take that risk of not knowing what's on the other side of that, that's when the possibility for breaking the game comes.
Absolutely. And you take your power back from giving it out to all these people, which most of these people don't even know. You know, they're probably long gone, 5-10 years, and you're still holding on to stuff. And so, you've got that. First of all, it requires so much output of energy to hold all of these beliefs in position. We have to understand that the tether from you to that person, that which is that belief tether, takes a lot of power from you as a power plant. And so those things drain us. I mean, they literally start to make you tired. They drain you and they affect your health. So I think it's important for us to tell the truth once again about the individuals, whether it be your partner right now, your husband, your wife, your family members, your kids,
your boss,
your job,
your boss,
all of that. I think it's really important that you start to look at where the blames are with these people and examine that. And for each one, you just start taking your power back from each one. One of my things with I remember, for me, that's just me. I remember changing the title. What did I change it to? I changed it from boss because of what it sort of, I don't know, signifies with people. And so I would just change that. And I would just see that it's whoever is in management or a manager. It's been so many years since I've been in corporate America now, but I changed that for me in my thinking, because there's a certain mentality that comes with that. There's a certain fear that comes with that, with your boss. And these are people. These are still people. That's that position that person holds. And to me, when you do that, it allows you to make these distinct boundaries in terms of what you will accept, even from those in authority in a company, what your boundaries are with that. But when we don't, we end up feeling like victims again and scared to say something in case we lose our jobs and so on. All of that, for me, to me, it has to be looked at, and you find new ways to language certain things so that you will have a different perception and different interpretation.
This kind of connects back to your story at the beginning about in the airport, right? Like you need to pick for yourself a behavior and a boundary that you can hold firm at without getting overly agitated. And if you need to do some work on yourself to get to that place, to be able to be calm at the boundary that you want to draw, then that's a glorious opportunity for you, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then do you have the courage to take a look at how you got here, right? And that's a big one, right? Like for me, it was, really being honest with myself about my choices around drug use, which were really, even though they were connected, the choices around drug use, I made myself. Did other people take advantage of the fact that I was on drugs and use that as it provided a plethora of opportunities for people with mind control, with targeting, right? But every time that I did it, I was making the choice to do it.
Right.
And so like my inability to get out of that space wasn't because of what others were doing or whatever, or how that I perceived they were doing to me. It was because I kept choosing to go back to the drug dealer's house and get more. And as soon as I made a different choice about that, right? And so that was how I got to a place where I was in no control over my life, was because of my path with drugs, right?
Absolutely.
All these other things happened, right?
As a result, a domino effect, a ripple effect.
Or even if they were happening separate, my inability to do anything about them was because of something that I kept doing.
Right.
And as soon as I didn't do it anymore, then you can do something about it. So,
Yeah. Clarity. You're clearer. I mean, yeah, I get it. I mean, man, we don't have time to list the stuff I've had to come to. Do you have the courage to take a look at how you got here? And I had to on several occasions in my life without knowing this stuff to this degree at all. But patterns that would keep happening to me, and I had to finally see them and then start changing them. And did it happen overnight? A lot of this stuff didn't happen overnight, but I had to be consistent and I had to commit and realize that, wow, the only reason why this keeps happening to you is because you keep doing this thing over here. And now you've wired your brain like this. You've wired your reality like this. So now it's going to take a moment maybe to unwire, but I'm sticking to it because I realize the necessity of this change. And so, yes, taking a look at how you got here it's a summary of everything we've talked about also, really, but how you got here and where is here, and when we say here, we're talking about maybe how you're perceiving your life at this time. Why is it my finances are always this way? Why is it I always have these relationship issues? I can't seem to get into a good relationship. Why is it that people are always taking advantage of me? All these things that you say to yourself, okay, you need to stop and go, okay, but why? How did I get here into these experiences and these situations? And then, like Emily said, now you have to stop and change them. Now you go, okay, you know what? Permission to change, taking back charge, taking back conscious charge of my life. Charge, and I like the word charge once again, because it is about the output. It is about that energy.
Another big one that goes with that one is about around expectations and around like setting up like part of your path being dependent on somebody else changing their behavior, right? So like a lot of the situations I found myself in and other people have, it's because I had some expectations that I never announced to them, or that I wasn't even honest with myself about with people, or that I just thought, okay, well, this person is not showing good signs for something, but I'm hoping that I can change them, or that they'll change over time. And they never said they wanted to, or they would, or whatever. And so you keep making decisions based on this imaginary time in the future when the person will suddenly fulfill your expectations or change the way that they behave or whatnot. And really it's been, you doing it the whole
the whole time. And the person, what's so beautiful and crazy at the same time about this is that that person keeps holding their position on a particular behavior to support your belief system as well. Because all you have are characters and game players there to support your story and your game. So you have to, that's the reason why everything we're saying becomes so necessary, because your life and the people and the conditions are being supported by the story that we keep telling ourselves. And that's the reason why, again, do you have the courage to take a look at how you got here starts to interrupt, when you can do that, interrupt the story, especially a story and an experience and a current lifestyle and health lifestyle and all of that, that is not what you would like it to be.
Okay, I'm gonna skip ahead. We're gonna do this one, but for 1 second, I'm gonna skip ahead to the tell the truth to yourself and then act on change. And I keep telling myself I can wait till the end of this segment to go to the bathroom, but I can't. So I'm gonna hit pause really quickly, and then we're gonna come back and get to this is what it takes to let everyone else off the hook. I'm gonna hit pause real fast. I will be right back.
Okie doke.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. But, I told myself the truth. I acted on that change
She
and I
acted
feel
on
much
that,
better. All
and she
right.
could have just pottied on the chair.
Okay. So then the next one is it's a statement. This is what it takes to let everyone else off the hook. And this one I think is super important right now in this way that I've really been looking at. And that is for the kind of changes that we would like to see in the world, right? And the kind of changes we'd like to see in ourselves and all that kind of stuff, because the two things mirror each other, right? For me, when I started accepting responsibility and stopped blaming the other people, things opened up for me. Right now in this world, a lot of people have gotten to the place where they need there to be an external change. They need the pedophiles to be arrested. They need the politicians to be arrested. They need the chemtrail program to stop before they're able to go forward, right? And what happens when we put our energy into think about how many hours people have spent passing rumors back and forth on the QAnon shit about oh my God, they're going to arrest this celebrity pedophile this week and that celebrity pedophile and blah, 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 blah. And what ends up happening is they're looking for the punishment of a person rather than that the actual crime or the activity stop. Right. And so the more people understand how these things happen in a society, and that it really happens when one person does something and doesn't take responsibility for it and then pulls another person into it to help them cover shit up, and it goes on and on and on and on. Right. And so rather than focusing on needing to punish people or to be angry at people or blame them, this doesn't mean that I think that people who've committed awful crimes don't need to be punished for them. But when our focus is so intensely on that, right, it actually, in my opinion, in some ways perpetuates the behavior, because it becomes this ridiculous, people want to see Hillary Clinton frog marched or whatever, right? Instead of just let's shift the culture to the point where nobody would ever want someone like Hillary Clinton in charge, right? That kind of thing. And the same thing goes for yourself, right? Rather than, continuing to be angry at your parent or this or that or the other thing, actually changing the behavior in yourself and what you will accept, and then the person is not going to be able to pull that shit off on you, right?
Right. Absolutely. And I think that this is what it takes to let everyone else off the hook. One of the things that I was seeing is now in particular how we're being told, do it for others, do it for others. Yeah. And to me, that's a biggie, because they are they're encouraging and supporting this idea of non-self responsibility, of putting it off on others to be responsible for you, while in the meantime, which is why the lady that I talked about earlier in the car, the lady that was obese, and she's like, oh yeah, it's too soon. They lifted the lockdown too soon. Taking no responsibility, but blaming others and wanting other people to be accountable for her being safe and healthy, as opposed to her saying, what can I do? And this is widespread. This is what is being thrown around when we if you listen to the news and these people that are the voices, supposed to be the voices of reason or medicine or whatever. That's what they're pushing. And they have everybody else chanting, well, you just do it for others. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. No, you need to take responsibility. And I am a big advocate of that. Yeah. That is probably a big pet peeve of mine, is that people are not being encouraged or told to take responsibility. And that's where the very beginning of this list, Emily, is about that. Can you look at these things? That is taking responsibility, so you can let everybody else off the hook and stop making people responsible for choices that person has made that has now resulted here. And this is going back in time. We're talking years back, maybe whatever the choices they made throughout their whole life of just eating nonsense or bad relationships and being whatever state they're in. This is a time of taking personal responsibility. And when we don't, we get an adverse reaction from not owning our stuff. The more we own our stuff and take our power back from making everybody else responsible,
Yeah.
is the more we build the body and the actual immune system.
What can I do right now? Not what is somebody else going to do about it?
Yeah. You take responsibility for me. Well, if people aren't wearing their mask, it's putting everybody at risk. No, it is not. No, it is not. But that's the languaging. That is what they're saying. If everybody would wear, or what about this person that has this problem? And then look, this is a time where part of taking personal responsibility, the condition you're in, maybe you need to stay home. Maybe now is the time you stay in. And while you are in, you look at, how am I taking care of myself? What am I eating? What's my lifestyle like? What's my mind like? What my health, all the stuff that we talked about. But don't blame it on other people to make them responsible. And real quick.
So that goes
I was going to tell this really quick. I'm not going to be very long about it, but I throw this in because, and maybe I've talked about it on other shows before. I don't know. I could have brought it up. When I've gone into a store like Costco where there's bulk items, and I've watched people who don't look healthy at all loading up on cases of Coke and flour and pork rinds, massive bags of pork rinds, and wearing their mask. It is the most insane thing to me, is to watch that. But then people like that get upset. You're not wearing your mask. You're not being a good citizen. You're not looking out for others. You're being very selfish. No, you're being very selfish by sucking down all that food that is low frequency, and then you can't breathe, and then you have a problem. And I'm being, blunt, because I usually am about this stuff, because this is a time of telling yourself the truth. This is where we are right now. This is part of the transformation on the planet. This is part of how you get to whatever the next expansive state in this body is, by telling yourself the truth. To thine own self be true.
Yeah. So once you stop blaming other people, let them off the hook for whatever's wrong with you, then they can let you off the hook for what's wrong with them. You can tell yourself the truth and act on the change. I thought that was great. And then no one is your keeper. This is your life and your responsibility, right?
Oh,
and this is a big one right now, because, people are, very, very convinced that we have overlords right now, right? And let's be honest, you and I occasionally fall into this ourselves. It's hard not to, because of, the way the game is deployed at this particular, maybe forever, maybe it's always been that way, right? And it may just be a feature of the game that in order for a person to overcome something, there needs to be a perceived obstacle, right?
It's an upgrade feature.
Yeah, right.
A drastic upgrade feature.
So are the government in charge of us, Sonia?
In the illusion of it for those people, no. What we have is, we have a system, a government that is governing the system, the matrix, the 3D version anyway of the matrix, and all that is within the boundaries of that matrix. And depending on, our levels of interaction with those things, but they don't govern us. What we are is, we are free game players. Nobody is really making us be part of the game like this per se. We can find other ways to be part of the game, but obviously, no, I'm clear on that. There's things that I've gotten to like in the game and I enjoy. And so I do them. Now, if I want to go find some spot out in the middle of nowhere and live out there quietly, then that's an option too. You could do that. People go, oh, no, I can't. Yeah, you can. You could do that if you wanted to. The question is, you can plant your own food. You can do all of these other things. So I think it's telling ourselves the truth about all of this. The system governs according to its own little rules that it keeps making up and changes. And it governs also according to the response that it's getting from those participating in the system, in the construct. So it's a question of, you know, how do you choose to participate? A quick story on my driver's license. Now, a few years back, now I lived in Illinois. It's been many years since 1988. I moved away, and I went to get my license maybe like 5 years ago, and it came up when I went to renew my license that my license were like blocked. Like what? Some ticket from Illinois from 1986, right? Right, really, from like 1986. So I'm like, okay. So at the time, I was like, okay, when I called, and I'm not going to go through the whole story. When I called, they had to pull it from the archive. It was all this nonsense that they had to do to find out what the tickets were. There were 3 tickets that I got on the same day. One was for not having my son in a seatbelt. Understand, 1986, my son was almost 6 years old. My son is 40 this year. This is how ridiculous this is, because it came up again. I was able to get my license when I went back, and they couldn't find anything, so I got it. Now this time I go to renew my license. Here it is once again. Oh, so I had to deal with the whole thing, because I said, you know what, Sonia, let's just resolve this. Let's just resolve this. That's all part of the game construct. And so I ended up dealing with it, and it worked out because, you know, the judge, I had to get a lawyer, but the judge threw the whole thing out. He thought it was preposterous. This is 2020. That was 1986, right? So yeah,
the game has a long memory.
I'm telling you. Well, they're pulling tickets from like the 60s.
Yeah.
So this is how ridiculous it is.
Well, I think they know this system is about to come to an end, and so they're trying to, you know, cash in on it, right?
Well,
like
they're cashing in, creating new, you know, new ways. Yeah, new rules, new ways, whatever. My whole thing was that was part of a pattern. Let me just say this. For me, that needed to be cleared because it was a pattern with me. I've always been resistant, yes, to the system, and in a way where it probably caused me more problems than anything. Yep. So over time, I had to start changing that. I had to start changing it. I had to start seeing that there was another way to interact with this interactive system, this interactive game system, and that this system is about war and opposition and banter. So since it's about that, then it's always looking for that. So how can I operate within it and not, you know, not have to be in one sense governed by it in a way where people feel like they have no choice. So that's basically some of what I've had to do is change my perception of the system and realize I'm a game player. I'm a game player in the system, and I'm seeing how to be a better game player, navigate around the system to a point where frequency, you know, which again, which is what we talked about with the mind, thoughts, all of that, where we begin to move through the system more invisibly. But you can't do it when you've got a lot of loose ends of war and all of this stuff. You can't, because it's going to sense that, because that's what it's about.
And when there's something out there that can upset you every time it comes up, you need to resolve that stuff so that there isn't always that thing that they can dangle or do.
Oh yeah, and that's what I was doing, boy. I was in constant, I was either doing this thing or not paying my registration or that. And I was like, no. I mean, that was me for a long time, but I had to learn. It was very educational for me because I became more of an expert, believe it or not, as to how the system functions and works. I ended up educating myself, which is how I know about the sovereignty movement, because I ended up having to educate myself because I was so opposed to the way the matrix was run and feeling like you're making me do something. But that was part of my education. So I don't feel like, oh man, why did I do that? No. Now I'm a more advanced game player and I understand it. Now it's a matter of navigating through this construct without that kind of interaction anymore.
Absolutely. All right. And so when you've done all these things, you're in a position to be able to take charge. And as you said before, the use of the word charge is probably very deliberate in that, you know, when you stop wasting energy on all these other things,
charging up those things,
right? You finally have the level of energy that is needed to sort of push through to the other side of something, which is where we're going to go in the second segment. We're going to start talking about, once you've kind of resolved a lot of this for yourself, you know, have a lot of extra energy to start putting towards, like, you know, there's a lot of attention being paid to stuff going on over here, right? Like the way distraction works, and that's what all of this is. All of this stuff is a distraction. It's, you know, look over here, look over here. There's like a whole empty ball field over here where you can make a long run right now.
Sleight of hand trick. That's the same thing.
But yeah, and you know, you can make a long run. You can charge the, you know, you can cross the field right now, but that takes energy to make that long run, because we don't know how long we're going to have this time. So our energy would be better spent someplace else. So I think we're going to end the first segment now and move over to the patron section. You can join us there at patreon.com/offplanetmedia. But before we go, Sonia, tell people where they can find you.
TheRealSoniaBarrett.com is my website, and pretty much everything is posted there. Lots of articles and blog and upcoming workshops and just all kinds of things. And I do encourage people to, if you haven't seen my documentary, The Business of Disease, I do encourage you to do that. And there's a lot of different platforms that you can watch it. It used to be on Amazon Prime. You might still see it there, but it's also on YouTube and what's the other one? Oh gosh, there's tons of them. But anyway, go to thebusinessofdisease.com as well.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much. And we will see you on the other side. All right, stop the share. And there.